kick off day 3 of our demos for the Ignite 2025 Azure Local and Azure Arc booth. Excited to talk to you a little bit about some of the types of application workloads that we're seeing customers leverage now that we've talked for the last 2 days about the investments that they make in their infrastructure and how they do the typical care and feeding and scale management of those deployments. Can you talk to us a little bit about some of the specific use cases that we're seeing customers leverage when they're making these investments? I think one of our most popular ones you're showing on the screen right now, Azure Virtual Desktop.
Yeah, not surprising. AVD is one of the most popular offerings in Azure, and customer demand for AVD on Azure Local has gone through the roof. And so AVD on Azure Local has been around for a while, and we continue to make huge improvements to it. So let's just kind of go over what we've added and, the foundationals of how this works. So,
okay, great.
The brilliant thing about AVD on Azure Local is it's the exact same experience as AVD on Azure. Really, the admins of AVD don't have to really learn new technologies to be able to support AVD Session Host on Azure Local. And so that's kind of a key thing. So here you can see I've got lots of different app or host pools that I'm managing. And in this case, we'll focus on this ACX AVD one. And you can see this is a host pool that's living in our subscription. And this is made up of Azure Local virtual machines. But, here you couldn't really tell that, right? So we can see we have 2 machines. One's in a connect status, one can't connect. So we'll have to figure that out. But as we're diving in, we could see the session hosts that are part of this. And so we could see that we have session hosts on 2 different Azure Local instances, one in Bellevue, one in our Dallas cluster. So these are located in different regions in the United States. And as we dive in, you can see the health check of this virtual machine or this session host. And really, the only way I can tell that it's an Azure Local VM is if I dive further into it. And you can see here very quickly that it's an Azure Local virtual machine, or the virtual machine kind is that. And I can see that it's got an RFC 1918 IP space, and it's routable across my network, and it's got the extensions, and it's actually part of a domain. This is a session host, but that's the point, is really these 8 Azure Local VMs can run at the edge and give my applications that are latency or data sovereignty sensitive accessibility across the wide area network, the internet, or directly on our local networks, right? So managing this is exactly the same. I can apply application groups, whether they're desktop or remote application groups, assign the session host as part of this, and assign monitoring insights, scale out, and more. Now, what's bothering me is when we're looking at this, we have a session host that's unavailable, and I don't understand why. And it's not in drain mode or anything, so it looks like it's powered off. Well, actually, this is part of what's taking place, and what's taking place is our scaling plan. Demand for scaling plans has come into Azure Virtual Desktop running on Azure Local. And so you can see that I have a schedule assigned to this host pool. That's my weekday schedule running Monday through Friday. And we can see that it's being repeated, that we have a ramp up time at 8 a.m. to have capacity goals that are met. We have peak hours, and then we have ramp down time. And what's happened in this case is that our scaling plan has realized that we don't have enough users to justify 2 session hosts to be powered on, so it's only left 1 on. I might need to manipulate this, but that's what's exactly happened. So that's a case of where we're seeing cost optimization, and that's one of the newer features that we've brought down to Azure Virtual Desktop on Azure Local, something that our Azure brethren got first. The experience of connecting to those Azure Virtual Desktop session hosts is exactly the same as it is to the Azure hosted session host. And so a user using Windows 11, in my case, would use the Windows application, and they can connect to their session desktop, much in the exact same experience, because you're going through the same Azure front door experience that you would have. And so we're going to be prompted for our single sign-on credentials. In this case, this is a hybrid joined session host, joined to my local Active Directory and joined to Intra as well, to my Intra tenant. And so that experience becomes the exact same. Now, as I connect into it, you can see the latency is very good, right? And I can interact and activate all the applications that I may need to get started with. Now, if you're curious about what that connection is like, you can always open up the connection information and dive a little deeper into this. Now, my connection round trip time is high, and that's because I am using UDP, but I'm on a site-to-site VPN from my house to my Azure subscription. If I was a user accessing this and I was on VPN, I would be on a UDP connection, or if I was in the local connection, I would be on UDP. And that's because RDP short path is enabled for Azure Virtual Desktop by default now for our users, and that was a huge demand. This means that if you are direct connected to the network, after that initial connection, we're switching you over seamlessly to a UDP connection. This means that if I'm doing this on Azure Local and that network connection is maintained, then I will remain on this. Even if that site loses internet connectivity, I will remain connected to the session host as long as I keep this window open, or as long as my group policy allows that session to be maintained in a suspended state. So that's one of the better benefits that you have here as well. One of the other things that we've added recently is GPU capabilities. And so I don't have it on this machine, but with GPUs that are physically connected to our Azure local host, you can leverage an A series or a T series, or now even what we're announcing is the RTX Blackwell series GPUs are able to be discretely device assigned to these session host VMs, or in a GPU partition manner where you can take one GPU with lots of GPU memory and carve it up and give it to multiple session host VMs. So these are just some of the announcements that we've made recently with AVD on Azure Local.
It seems that we're continuing to make investments in this. We're hearing a lot of customers still leveraging this. If you wanted to take an extra 10 seconds here and explain to folks why this solution has been so popular, how would you kind of wrap this particular conversation up?
AVD is just a widely popular solution. With COVID, we saw the ramp up go with it. And really, it's just one of the easiest ways that you can onboard virtual machines and serve many users with a single virtual machine and get the most cost optimized version. What we see with AVD on Azure Local is an expansion of that, and a need for applications that are a little more sensitive to network latency or data performance at the edge can be leveraged on top of AVD with Azure. And now we can get kind of a combination of everything that you would want. You can have full desktops running in Azure, and you can have remote applications that are talking to latency sensitive databases at the edge as remote applications or even full desktop experience. Overall, the brilliant thing that we've done with AVD on Azure Local is we've made the experience the exact same regardless of where you're running your workload.
Yep, so which is really hopefully a valuable thing for customers that are kind of looking at a hybrid solution where maybe some of the workloads remain on-prem and maybe they're using AVD in cloud for other use cases within their environment.
Yeah, it's kind of the key thing with Azure Local that I want people to remember is Azure Local is extending their workloads, and when they're deploying their virtual machines, whether they're workload VMs or they're session host for Azure Local or session host AVD virtual machines, the question is, where does it make sense to run this virtual machine at? At the edge, close for a latency reason, or in cloud where I can scale it up quite more? That's the best scenario that you're getting with Azure Local.
Awesome. And we're giving our customers the opportunity to pick and choose either or in some cases, both.
Exactly. There's no reason you can't have both.
Absolutely. Well, Michael, thanks for catching us up a little bit on what's been going on with AVD over the past couple of years. I think that, knowing how popular this solution is, it's something that's a hot topic. A lot of folks asking about it. Great to just catch up on it, and a good way to kick off our day where we're focusing on the applications our users are running. So thanks again for joining me.
Absolutely. Thank you.